Morning, everybody. Mr. Clays here for another edition of Engine Basics. I was going to talk about a little bit about adding oil today. It was going to be a relatively short unit. And when I popped the hood on my vehicle, I thought, wow, I've got an opportunity to teach you something just as important. And it also is kind of timely. So today we're going to talk about battery terminal maintenance. And that's basically the connections of your battery to your engine. And I will show you what mine look like, but let's get prepped first. So if you're going to do this yourself, you're going to need a couple things. I have a slurry here of just some water and some baking soda. Arm & Hammer baking soda is just fine. And what this does, it helps to neutralize the acids, and it also helps to remove a little bit of the corrosion. So there's no secret recipe to it. Just grab some baking soda from the kitchen. Make sure it's baking soda, not baking powder. Mix it in with a little bit of water, mix it up really well, and kind of make a liquid slurry out of it. The other thing that you'll need is some sort of a brush. And what you should do right now, run to the bathroom, grab your younger brother's toothbrush, you know, the brother that annoys you the most, grab his toothbrush and bring it back to the shop. Okay, so don't do that. Don't go grabbing your brother's toothbrush. But old toothbrushes are great for this. So a lot of mechanics, they will take an old toothbrush and they will put it out in their garage, or they'll put it in their toolbox or something like that, because they are really handy. And this is one of those things that they're really handy for. So I have an old toothbrush here. I don't know how old it is, but we're going to use that today. A couple other things that you'll need. You'll need a wire brush, or you might be able to use a smaller wire brush. And you should have some lithium grease. Now, this is kind of optional. We'll talk about what this does and why we use this, but this is an optional thing that will hopefully keep you from having to do this too often. So we'll pause our video, we'll get set up into our next stage, and we'll meet back here in a little bit. So we're back, and you can see that I have a pretty grody battery. I'm actually kind of embarrassed that it's gotten to this point. Let me push this down just a little bit, but you can see the corrosion, this bluish greenish corrosion that happens around the battery terminals. The negative terminal in my battery happens to be a lot worse than the positive terminal. Now I can identify my negative from my positive in a couple ways. A lot of times your positive terminal is going to have a red cap on it, or it's going to be identified with a red, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a red lead going down to my starter motor. Usually any positive terminals or anything associated with positive charge on your engine is going to be red. The other way I can tell is I can actually look at my battery and see where it's hooked up to, and on my battery I have a little plus sign right here. My negative terminal, a lot of times they are uncovered, or they'll be black. They'll have a black rubber covering instead of a red rubber covering. And again, if you looked on the battery, there should be a minus sign for negative. Now, I've already taken the liberty of loosening these two terminals up, because we're going to need to remove them completely from our engine. I got to caution you that the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you loosen and remove your negative terminal first. Make sure you do that. The reason why is if I do that to my positive terminal and I accidentally take my wrench and hit any metal part on either my vehicle, the frame, the body, any part, it is going to have a potential of welding my wrench to my vehicle, which is a bad thing. Don't do that. Remove your negative terminal first. So in the process of if I accidentally now with the positive terminal, I accidentally touch any metal part of my vehicle, it's not going to create sparks and the potential of welding my wrench to my vehicle. And then I can remove my negative terminal. So again, you can see that I've got some corrosion underneath my terminals. I want to remove that. So I'm going to grab my slurry, and I'm going to pour a little bit over the top of my battery. And you can see that foaming action, and that's just the baking soda water activating with the acids from the battery itself, or from the corrosion of the battery itself. So when you scrub this, you want to make sure you use some sort of eye protection. I'm not going to get real aggressive with this. I just want to get as much of that corrosion off of that battery with as little brushing action as I can. So again, if you don't have glasses, if you don't wear glasses, you should wear safety glasses while performing this task. And I probably should have put that on my list of stuff that you'll need. So as I pour a little bit more on top of my terminals, I notice that I don't have nearly the foaming that I had before. So they're getting pretty clean. And then I want to do the same thing with my terminals of my connectors. So again, pour a little bit on there. You want to scrub as much of that stuff off of there as you possibly can. And this baking soda water mixture does a really good job of helping to clean those terminals up. These terminals happen to be a copper based. A lot of times you'll see terminals that are lead, and they're a little more difficult to work with sometimes. The advantage of the lead, of course, is that it really bends easy to conform to the battery, the terminal itself, the size of the terminal. But I want to try and get as much of this corrosion off of this battery as I possibly can. I want to make sure I get inside my terminals, because if I don't get that off of the inside where it makes contact with my battery terminal, it's really doing no good. So I'm going to pause the video because you don't want to see me sitting there and scrubbing this thing for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll pick it up when I get things cleaned up. All right, so we're back and I've got the battery pretty well cleaned up. One thing I'm finding out with these type of terminals, these copper terminals that aren't lead-based, is that there's a lot of nooks and crannies in these things, and it's tough to get all of that corrosion out of those type of terminals. So I guess that's another advantage to the lead terminals. I suppose I could take these all the way off and I could really scrub them down, and if I had more time, maybe I would do that. But I think for our purposes today, these are just fine. So the next thing that you want to do is reinstall your terminals. You also notice that I've cleaned the terminals up a little bit. There's that oxidation that happens with metal. When we have it happen to iron, we call it rust. There's just different levels of oxidation, but it gives the terminals a little bit of a dull color, and I just cleaned a little bit of that off with a soft brass brush just to kind of polish those up. Now, you can actually go to Auto Value or any of your auto parts stores, and you can get a battery terminal cleaner, which is a kind of a neat thing, because what it will do is it'll have a brush that fits on the inside of the terminal. It'll clean those up, scrub those up nice, and then it actually, the other end of the brush, you pop the cap off, you put it on the other end, and it'll actually clean the outside of the terminal itself. So, you know, those are great, and I just thought I had one here at the school shop, and I don't. So now to reinstall, you remember when we removed our battery cables, we removed the negative cable first, and then we removed the positive terminal. So we are going to do that in the opposite. So we are going to put the positive back on, and we are going to tighten that down, and then we're going to put the negative on and tighten that down. And I'll pause the video again because hopefully by now you know how a wrench works, and we don't have to show you that. So I'm just going to pause the video. I'll tighten these back down, get them reinstalled, then we'll talk about the last thing you want to do. All right, so we're back, and we have our terminals tightened down. If I were to grab onto this terminal, I should not be able to have it twist on the terminal itself, on the battery post. So that's the next to the last step. And then the very last step that you want to do, and this is optional, and remember, one of the ingredients, or one of the things I said that you should have on hand, is some white lithium grease. What you want to do with this lithium grease is you just want to smear it on the outside of the terminals. Now, I've seen people who actually will coat the post terminals or the battery post before they put the clamps back on, or the terminals back on. I don't know. I've heard both ways. One, it says that it prevents that corrosion from happening between the post and the clamp itself. Other people say that it can actually cause arcing because the electricity is having a difficult time getting through the grease. You know, I don't know. Somebody who's a lot smarter than I am can comment on my video and let the rest of us know. But all I'm going to do is take a smear of grease, and I'm just going to cover the outside of the terminal with this white lithium grease. You don't need a lot. As a matter of fact, you probably don't want to use a lot. I also like to cover the threads of the bolt itself, because if those things get full of corrosion, they can be really difficult to get off of there. So as much as I can, I'm just going to smear that grease in and around there without trying to make a huge mess out of it. So do that to the negative, do that to the positive real quick here. I've got another class coming online in about 15 minutes. Kind of work that down in there, those crevices, just to try and keep the oxygen from getting down in between the terminals. Whether this is going to prevent this in the future, it really depends upon me and how well I maintain this battery. So I need to take a look at this, and I actually need to do this a little more often. Mine, it wasn't the worst I've ever seen, but those were pretty bad. So last thing I want to do is, if I have these caps, I want to just push that back over the top of my battery terminal. Half the time these things don't sit down real snug anyway. But anyway, that's today's quick video on battery maintenance. It's not a bad idea because, if this corrosion does build up, it can affect how well your battery performs, and it might even prevent your vehicle from starting. So every once in a while, especially summer months when it's a little warmer, you want to try and do this. The other caution thing that you should know is that, this corrosion in the liquids that are coming off the battery are going down on your floor. So if you're on top of bare concrete, you probably want to either put something down like a drip pan or something of that nature to prevent your concrete from getting stained, or you just want to pull out somewhere onto the gravel where it's not going to be that big of a deal. So I hope you enjoyed this video on battery maintenance. I hope that you've learned a couple things, and this is something that's really easy to do. So if you pop your hood and you look at your terminals and you think, holy cow, it's exactly what Mr. Clare said was happening, now you can take care of it too. So until next time, don't drive your parents crazy, because you are. All right, take care, everybody.